Head Extreme Pro 2024 review. I think Head really improved this line and they work on the feedbacks that were in general coming up from the reviewers and people. I think the main issues with the previous versions was mainly plow through, lack of stability, and I think with this edition they made it just better. Let's go to the review, but first music discovery tool. Please give a warm welcome to Katanek. So yeah, first impressions swinging the Extreme Pro is that the wave distribution is much better compared to the previous versions. I think the plow through is now much more natural. Swinging through the ball is much easier. With the previous versions you really had to accelerate on your own. It's a bit different sensation when swinging, like you make the racket fly or you let the racket fly. Totally different swing styles, and with Extreme Pro I think it is pretty much in the middle, so it should suit both, let's say, swing styles. You can allow the racket to make the job for you, just focusing on the loop and fluidity, and you can kinda boost the swing from acceleration from your wrist. So the swing wave is positioned very well for a spin-oriented racket, because yes, this is one of the most spin-oriented racket on the market. Not many frames can rival the Extreme Pro. The only rackets that I'm thinking about right now that can really challenge Extreme Pro in terms of spin potential are Babolat Pure Aero 98, Solinco Whiteout 1619, Diadem Elevate Tour, Technifiber T-Fight 98 300 gram version endorsed by Iga Świątek, and of course Head Gravity Tours. And I intentionally selected the frames, the spin-oriented rackets that also are trying to give you some feedback, some control, some sense of the more focused sweet spot. And I think it is quite important to balance the frame, especially spin-oriented rackets, to give still sense of control, sense of feel, what you're doing with the ball. Spin-oriented rackets can often shoot the ball too high. The biggest challenge with those type of rackets is to make the response as predictable as possible. It's a challenge because if you want a spin-oriented racket, usually you want to make the string spacing a bit bigger, and with bigger string spacing you lose a bit of this connection and sense of lower launch angle, so sometimes the ball just jumps on you, and with higher launch the risk of hitting long increases. So this is a constant balancing game of rackets and strings, and for me Head Extreme Pro is actually one of the best when it comes to the control out of spinny frames. So this actually puts Head Extreme Pro quite high on my ranking, I would say. And if I had to pick similar rackets when it comes to this balance of control and spin, I would say I would have to mention Elevate Tour, Whiteout 1619, and of course Babolat Pure Aero 98. So yeah, we started this review as a quite positive one. Let's go to the things that maybe weren't as good, and I think it is still the feel. This is also a balancing game, how much comfort you want to get from the racket until it becomes too mushy. Like for example, Vicor 98 is for some, I'm sure, a pretty mushy frame. Yeah, Extreme Pro, I think in the past was a very direct feeling racket, but the lack of swing wave, plow through, stability was just leaving me with this sensation of a toyish racket. Like I didn't feel the solidness of the frame like I feel with the Whiteout, for example. The newest Extreme Pro, I think, corrected this solidness. Toyish feeling is no longer there. I had no intention to customize the frame even further. Maybe some mass to the handle to make it more whippy or a bit more prestige-like in feel, in swing style, but other than that, I would say a very well-balanced frame. But when it comes to the feel, I think yes, they increase the comfort, but something is a bit weird. It reminded me of the Wilson Blade countervail, where you strike the ball and first you get the first impact, first information to the hand, and it is a bit, let's say, on a stiffer side, more feedback, but then you kind of feel like this raw feedback is kind of covered in something soft. So you have two sensations, something raw covered in something soft. And not many frames now have this sensation, and people in general didn't like the countervail. So I think those who didn't like the countervail sensation, they won't enjoy the Extreme Pro from 2024. Racket felt kinda stiff and soft at the same time. Whenever I hit with something a bit like stiffer and soft at the same time, the racket to me feels a bit cheap. I feel like the construction is stiff and the brand is trying to mask this sensation with some materials to make it back soft again. As a grinder, for me, it is really important to have a very uniform flex, very uniform feel. Wherever I strike the ball on the string bed, I kind of want to feel the same thing. Let's go now to the launch angle. I think it is helping a bit. Of course, Extreme Pro is a spin-oriented racket, so it shoots the ball a bit higher. Compared to the Gravity Tour, I would say the launch angle is quite similar. The difference is mainly in feel between the Extreme Pro and Gravity Tour. Gravity Tour is much sweeter, much more uniform in feel, and surprisingly, Gravity Tour for me has a bit more power than the Extreme Pro. Maybe it is associated with the specs because Gravity Tour has a bit higher swing wave, so in general higher swing wave rackets plow through the ball a bit more and give you a bit bigger power potential, even if the frame as a design is more control oriented. But yeah, the string spacing on both rackets is quite big, so it makes sense that the sensation of the launch angle and spin potentials should be similar. When I tried the racket with my friend that is using Radical MP, he mentioned that he was slightly afraid of shooting long, and that is mainly associated with the higher launch angle. Radical MP is really good for those flat hitters, but it leaves this margin for the players to shape the ball. And yeah, with Extreme Pro you kinda want to hit all the time with spin, otherwise the ball might fly on you. That same kind of thing applies to the Gravity Tour, for example. But here comes the feel, right? With Gravity Tour as a more feel-oriented racket, I have a bit better sensation of what I'm doing with the ball, kinda. And the Extreme Pro is having this little catapult effect, and I'm not really sure to what extent this catapult effect will work. More or less, and depending on my swing speed it might boost a bit more or a bit less. So I would say Gravity Tour is a bit more consistent in response and launch angle. Extreme Pro is a bit easier to use, but the response is a bit more erratic and a bit more unpredictable. So for me as a grinder, I would still pick Gravity Tour 1619. However, I appreciated that the frame felt kind of fast and stable at the same time. So something that many might struggle with playing with the Gravity Tour. I think in this case Extreme Pro could be the only possible switch for those Gravity Tour users that want something easier, more user-friendly, and they can accept the fact that the frame will be a bit on a hotter side when it comes to the response, not necessarily pure power, but the response. So this is again a balancing act, because the Gravity Tour has the power potential from the swing wave and string spacing, where the Extreme Pro has the power from string spacing, similarly here, but also the design. So yeah, Gravity Tour has a more control-oriented design, and Extreme Pro has a more responsive design. That is the main difference between those two rackets. You have a control-oriented world, spin and power-oriented world, and yeah, Gravity Tour is trying to shift this group of rackets towards spin and power, and Extreme Pro is trying to be shifted towards control-oriented rackets, and you kind of meet very close in the middle, but you still feel like the basic of the design and the source from where the racket is coming. Compared to some recent rackets like Whiteout V2 or Technifiber T-Fight 300S, I would say that the Whiteout V2 is much more solid and kind of uniform in flex and feel. The response is a bit more predictable, but you lose a bit of this spin potential. And compared to the Technifiber T-Fight 300S, I would say T-Fight was a bit stiffer in feel, but this sensation of this pillow surrounding this soft feel was removed. So the feel was much more consistent, which I appreciated, but the stiff feel was just a bit too much for me. Current Extreme Pro is a bit more, well, extreme in its response, in its feel, and it's definitely towards a very specific group of players, for those who want to attack but still want a bit more control. It is a great racket. It is helping you more than, let's say, Prestige Tour. The only thing I would want to correct with the Extreme Pro is the feeling. I didn't really mind the slightly hotter response, hotter nature of the Extreme Pro because it was working quite well. I mention it quite often, like there are many ways to achieve similar things. Sometimes you can get a more responsive racket that is a bit lower in specs, so you kind of get this mix of power and control from different ways, and the other way around, you can kind of get a tighter string pattern but a much higher static wave or swing wave, and yeah, you get the power from pure mass or pure design or whatever, right? So finding a racket is a balancing act, and you might be surprised with some rackets that on paper are totally not for you, but some reason you play your best tennis with. But the feel and the sense of predictability, I think it's quite important. Extreme Pro is very close, like for a spin-oriented racket, it is really good. But yeah, something about the feel is not for me. It is quite similar to the Boom Pro when it comes to this feel. Maybe Boom Pro is a bit more on the muted side. Yeah, if I had to pick between those two, Boom Pro and Extreme Pro, 100% I would go with the Extreme Pro. I think now it would be just picking the one that is a bit more predictable, and Extreme Pro has this slightly more control-oriented DNA in its design. Extreme Pro, great racket, not for me. Give it a try and let me know how you liked it. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you can, and see you soon. Bye bye.